What would the fate of the Straw Hats be in the new world if the time skip never happened? Whoa. They would have died. Or would they? Haha, well, yes, I think that's pretty clear to say. I mean, that was the whole point of the time skip, you know. The Straw Hats are too weak to deal with the threats in the new world. The warlords, the Yonko, the stronger Marines, you know, like, there's no way they can deal with them. So let's have a time skip to stand still and train up and get ourselves a little bit more powerful, and then in 2 years we can take on that sea proper. Even then, you're still eventually gonna hit a roadblock, and that roadblock is named Kaido, but we'll see where that goes with the remainder of the Wano arc. Now, here's the thing though, I love me some what-if scenarios, right? So I think it's fairly, you know, easy to just assume, like, as soon as the Straw Hats hit the new world, they would get the crap beaten out of them by everyone around them, and then the series would end, like, right there, okay? So not much of a what-if, but no, if you actually think about this, this goes into some weird places, you know, kind of the same thing with, like, Usopp leaving. Like, it kind of creates, like, a whole new deviation of the story where things might have not have went the way they did. Like, the Straw Hats, you know, they go to Fishman Island, and then Punk Hazard, and then Dressrosa. That would not have happened if they didn't have the 2-year time skip. If, like, right after Marineford, right after the post-war arc, if Luffy returned to Sabaody and all the other Straw Hats arrived there as quickly as possible, and then they got the ship coded and they went to the new world, it would not follow the exact same path. So let's go over this. Now, the only issue really here with the time skip gap here is Rayleigh, because Rayleigh was the smart one that actually found Luffy on Amazon Lily, and he explained to him his idea. That's like, hey, I know you want to get back with your crew. I know you had a pretty bad defeat at Marineford, but just hear me out on this, Luffy. You have so much potential, and you remind me so much of Roger. I mean, Rayleigh doesn't say that to Luffy, but that's the reason why he's helping him out. And, you know, out of a favor for Shanks, I believe, as well, because Shanks met Rayleigh 10 years before he met Luffy, and he explained to, like, oh, Rayleigh, you know, Vice Captain, there's this kid in the East Blue I gave my Straw Hat to. He's just like Captain Roger. And so Rayleigh kind of took a liking to him. That was the whole reason. He was like, I'm going to train you up, I'm going to teach you hockey, and we're going to make sure that your friends know to wait for 2 years before returning to Sabaody. So it really wouldn't make a lot of sense for Rayleigh just to be like, yeah, you guys are ready for the new world, because they're clearly not. But the best way that I can really explain this away, why Rayleigh would let Luffy go, is remember when he gave Luffy that option, it was his choice. Okay, Rayleigh did not arrive at Amazon Lily and says, Luffy, you're training with me, no questions, you don't have a say in the matter, we're going to Ruskaina, come on. He didn't do that. He arrived at Amazon Lily just to kind of make sure he was okay, and then, you know, he gave him the option. He's like, if you want to go back to your friends, I'm not going to stop you. Alright, that's your adventure, it's your life, you have to make the decisions that you want to make regarding this. I'm only here to give you the possibility of, if you want to train, if you want to learn about hockey, I will do that. It'll be grueling, it'll be tough, and once you accept my offer, I am going to be your master and your coach, and you're going to have to listen to everything I say, but it's your choice, okay? So let's just say, after everything that happened with Marineford, after everything that happened with Ace, instead of Luffy having the perspective of, I'm so weak, I can't protect anyone, I need to train to get stronger, let's say just, he still has that, but his desire to see his friends was just stronger than that at that point. So when Rayleigh gives him that option, Luffy thinks about it for a little bit, and he's like, you know what? I do want to get stronger so I can protect my friends, and we will get stronger, but I want to see them right now. I want to get back together with my friends, and I want to continue our journey, and we're going to get stronger together, and maybe that's the better perspective to look at this here. Okay, is it the right choice? No. I think that's pretty clear from what we've seen in the New World. Hell, before we even got to the New World proper, do you remember that scene at Thriller Bark when Moria was talking about it? Because we just found out the New World existed at the end of Eni's lobby when Garp was talking about the New World and Kobe, and he was like talking about it with Luffy and everything, and then there's the Yonko that rule over it. The very next arc, Thriller Bark, you know, Moria brings up the New World, or somebody asks him about it, and he like has that psychotic break where Moria's like he's remembering what happened with Kaido and how his crew was annihilated. And I think Moria had the line of something like, "Don't even think you're ready for that sea, and you're a million years too young to journey on those waters," or something like that. And Moria was 100% accurate in that statement, right? So, you know, is it the wrong choice? I would say it is, but that doesn't mean that they're immediately going to get crushed the second they, you know, leave Sabaody. Because remember, the other supernovas, aside from Law, because Law kind of waited a little while too, not quite as long as 2 years, but he still waited a little while to enter the New World. But when it came to the other supernovas, when it came to Kid and Hawkins and Drake and Beige, they all they just went right from Marineford into the New World, and they had it a little bit rough at first, but they're still around now. Granted, Bonnie lost pretty much her entire crew. They were captured by Akainu, and she managed to escape. But she seems to be doing okay for herself. She managed to sneak into Reverie, so you can't do that if you're inexperienced, you know? There was that. Obviously, we've seen, like, Kid missing an arm, so they've taken a lot more battle damage, but they're still around. They're still alive. They're still prominent pirates. So let's just go through this. Okay, so after he meets Rayleigh, Rayleigh gives him the choice. Luffy's like, "I want to see my friends," and Rayleigh's like, "Okay, fine, that's your decision." And then probably at that point, what would happen next is Boa Hancock would just like, "Okay, Luffy, after you're all healed up, let's go." And then so Rayleigh too, I would imagine. I don't see any reason why Rayleigh would stick around. He would probably hop on the Kuja's ship and like, "All right, well, you're already going back home, where I live on Sabaody, so let's just go." So, you know, Boa Hancock and the Kuja pirates, Luffy and Rayleigh and Jinbei, they probably all jump on the ship and they sail off. Now, Jinbei, at some point, he's probably going to have to leave and head back to Fishman Island anyway, because he has some serious business down there he had to deal with, especially since this was right after Whitebeard's death, so he's probably really worried about his homeland. But I can imagine maybe because Jinbei cares about Luffy and he's like worried about his well-being and everything, Jinbei would also kind of wait until they got back to Sabaody, and then when everyone's grouped together, they would all go down to Fishman Island together. This would actually be really cool, because it would mean that, like Jinbei and probably Hachan as well, would be able to, like, guide the Sunny down there. So it might actually be, you know, vastly safer getting to Fishman Island if they went before the time skip as opposed to later, because Hachan was injured in the fight for the Sunny and with Duval and everything, and he couldn't, you know, guide them, and Jinbei was already down there, and he couldn't guide them either. But in this scenario, yeah, it definitely probably could happen like that. So they get back to Sabaody, and maybe Rayleigh gives him one more chance. He's like, "Luffy, I'll coat your ship for you. I'll coat the Sunny like I agreed to do, and you guys can head down, but are you really sure?" And he's like, "No, don't worry." But hey, it's going to take a little while for the Straw Hats to all gather back together at Sabaody. You know, they were all trying to get back there as quickly as possible before they saw the mess, before they did that stunt at Marineford with the Ox Spell and everything. They wanted to get back to Luffy as quickly as possible. Chopper was probably the one that was going to get back the quickest, because he had that flying bird from the Torino Kingdom, and, you know, after he helped the natives, he was like, "Oh, magic flying bird, can you take me back to Sabaody?" And the bird's like, "Caw-caw," which is bird speak for, "Sure, man, hop on." So he was hopping on, and that bird was huge, and that's how he got back to Sabaody anyway, and he rode on the giant bird, so it's like, okay. I wonder if he would have asked the bird, "Hey, can you take me to Raftel? Is this the giant eagle thing from the Lord of the Rings all over again? Like, hey, Chopper, remember that giant bird you had? Maybe we could have used that to fly over the Red Line or something." I would have probably gotten shot down by the world government or something, you know? It's like bogey on your 6, we're being invaded. But anyway, no, it probably wouldn't have been that easy. But Chopper would have probably been one of the first Straw Hats to arrive back at Sabaody the fastest, okay? He might have actually, I don't know how long it would have taken to fly from the South Blue to Sabaody. He might have gotten back there before Luffy and everybody did, because it was stated, like, Amazon Lily to Sabaody, that's like over a week it would take just by sailing with the Kuja pirate ship. So it still would have taken quite some time. But, okay, so Luffy gets back at Sabaody. Hey, as long as you're sitting around and waiting for the other Straw Hats to show up, which would probably take at least a few weeks, maybe a month maximum, because there were some that had, like, their conditions were a little more difficult. Like Frankie, for instance, was, where is Frank? Oh, Frankie's up here. What am I doing? I have all these Straw Hats set up, and I don't have Frankie? What the hell, man? The other Straw Hats for the Pop figurines I actually ordered, and they're coming in the mail. I haven't gotten them yet, but they are ordered, and they are, in fact, coming. So anyway, yeah, Frankie, he's in the future world of, future land of Baltimore, and he's kind of trapped because there's, like, ice, and he probably made some type of, icebreaker vessel in order to break free of the island. I'm kind of curious as what happened with that, because that's what Frankie probably did to escape, but we don't know. Other than that, he either took the Brachio tank and combined it with the FRU-4 to make the Frankie Shogun, and maybe that had some capabilities to sail on the water, but we've never seen it do that kind of stuff, so in order for Frankie to get off, he would have had to make some kind of ship, but that would have taken some time, even for Frankie. Frankie can't just, like, he can make a bridge in less than 5 seconds, but an entire, icebreaker ship probably would take him at least a few days for that, and then they would have to all sail back to Sabaody in some way. The only reason Zoro managed to get back to the island was because Perona was helping him. Which that still would have happened. I think Perona would have still helped Zoro. Now, Usopp... Usopp would be the tricky one, because Usopp, if he would have, I think, managed to get back to the island no problem. He would have just asked Heracles to help him. Heraclesen! It's like, Heraclesen, could you please, lend me your aid and giant atlas beetles to fly back to Sabaody? He's like, okay, Usopp-un, we might have to use 2 beetles-un for you-un, because you are rather obese-un. So, they would, like, get on their beetles and fly back to Sabaody, but, Usopp gets there, he's like, Luffy, I'm back! I'm like, oh, Usopp, hey man, how you doing? So, yeah, they're gonna have to deal with that for a while. Nami getting back would not be that much of an issue. All they have to do, it would take a little while, because the whole thing with area was, it moves on the wind currents, and I think they could, like, have a general, like, direction where they're going, but the speed was not something they can control, because the wizards on area, they're not interested in traveling, it's like, oh, let us go to the far reaches of the sea. They're just interested in kind of floating on the clouds and studying natural weather phenomena. That's what they're interested in, right? So it might take them a little while. Bottom line, even if they don't immediately leave from, like, even if they don't have the time skip, it's not going to be an immediate thing. It's still probably going to take at least a month or so before everybody gets back to Sabaody properly. Okay, just because of the distance and everything they had. Robin shouldn't have had much of an issue. Brook, okay, he was held captive by the Long Arm tribe at that point, but he starts playing the guitar, they let him out of the cage, like, oh, we're going to, make you a sideshow attraction. Perhaps we'll come up with a name for you. I have it. Maybe we'll call you the Soul King. And then they just turn around and Brook's gone, like, yo, I'm on my way, friends. It's like, maybe you'll be the Soul King. And he's gone. Crap. Why did we let him out of the cage? So, I think it would have taken a little while, but they would have all gotten back, no problem. In the meantime, Luffy could be training with Rayleigh. He wouldn't learn even probably the basics of hockey in that, short amount of time. Now, Luffy is a pretty quick learner. And I think he said, like, because we have the 3D2Y special to go on here. And the 3D2Y special takes place 6 months into the 2-year time skip. And Luffy, he was just beginning to, like, understand how to use armament hockey against Burndy World. He didn't have Gear 4th yet, but he was at least starting to understand observation and armament just a little bit. But we're not even probably waiting that long for all the Straw Hats to gather together. So, I don't know. If Rayleigh did teach him anything, it would probably just be extraordinarily rudimentary stuff. Now, here's the thing, though. What Rayleigh could do is, he could at least explain to him how all the different types of hockey work and what they are. He could also give him some warning. Do not use Conquerors unless you're absolutely, prepared to use it, because it might knock out your allies. The most that probably Rayleigh could teach him in that point is just, like, here are the fundamentals on beginning to master hockey. And after you begin sailing with your friends, do these certain lessons every day, and maybe you can start to learn a little bit more about it. Like I said, Luffy's a fast learner and all that stuff, but it's still probably going to be pretty rough for him. It wouldn't be that much of information from just a few weeks of training. Beyond that, he could physically spar with Rayleigh to get his physical strength. Maybe he's like, okay, this is me just, hey, maybe Luffy, he's quick thinking. He might figure out a way to kind of, like, deal with observation hockey. So it's like, oh, Rayleigh, let me try to hit you, and you could use observation. And Rayleigh's like, okay, fine, you're gonna miss every time, but sure. And then maybe Rayleigh can use observation, and maybe Luffy could figure out some way to at least compensate, not very well, but at least compensate, you know? Okay. So Straw Hats all gather back together, and they're probably not going to be I mean, they could maybe do a little bit of training too, like Nami could do a little bit of training while traveling there, but once again, not going to be very much. So they all get back at Sabaody. Rayleigh coats the ship, they stock up, they get everything ready to go, and they don't have to deal with anything like the fake, you know, the fake Straw Hat crew, the imposters like Damalo Black and everybody. Don't have to deal about them because they're not on the island yet. So they're like, all right, let's go to Fishman Island, and then they dive into the ocean. Now, thankfully, like I said, well, now that I'm thinking about it, if they arrive back at Sabaody, and it's going to take a while for the other Straw Hats to get back, Jinbei probably would want to go down to Fishman Island immediately. That's okay. So, but we still have Hachan. We still have Hachan there because the Sunny would be safe because Rayleigh and Luffy were there. If worse comes to shove while they're waiting for Frankie and everybody to get back, Luffy and Rayleigh themselves, and they could protect the Sunny, so it's fine. So Hachan would be uninjured, so you don't have to worry about that. But I think as soon as Jinbei made sure Luffy got back to Sabaody, Jinbei would be like, okay, Whitebeard's dead. I don't know what's going on with my home island right now. I need to get down there. Okay, but he might always say, I'll go down there, but like, oh, you're leaving in a month? Okay, I'll come back up here in a month, because it doesn't take that long to go for a fishman or a merman to go all the way down to Fishman Island and then all the way back up to Sabaody. It's like right above each other. It doesn't take that long for them to go down and back, you know, maybe only a few hours travel time. So, you know, Jinbei had to stay down there for 2 years, because that's a long period of time. But if he's like, oh, I'll be back up here in a month to check on you, and then I'll guide you back down. So that could still happen. Okay, so, provided that their journey down is relatively secure because of Jinbei and Hachan helping them out, things like, you have to remember, at the very beginning of the time skip, after we got back and they were sailing down to Fishman Island, and even Fishman Island itself, the Straw Hats steamrolled pretty much every direct physical threat that came their way. Holy crap, it's the Kraken! Gear 3rd, elephant gun. Boom! I tamed the Kraken. Done. So, if the Straw Hats, like, ran into the Kraken underwater, like, they wouldn't be able to take it out so easily, but if they all work together, they might be able to at least escape it, but if Jinbei and Hachan is with them, then Jinbei could probably, like, watch out, everyone, it's the Kraken! 15,000 brick fist! Boom! And then the Kraken gets, you know, deterred or taken out, and then the Straw Hats can continue to sail down. They might still run into Watetsume and Dekken down there. It's possible. They might still run into a volcanic eruption. But hey, at least they can enter Fishman Island properly, because I don't think Horty really had such an iron grip over the island quite yet. I don't think he was really enacting his master plan quite yet. He still had a following of people, but if anybody tried to stop him, and I think they even mentioned, like, the number of ships that went to Fishman Island and never came back was increasing the few months before Luffy and the gang arrived. I think Smoker said that, you know, when they found that one pirate crew that surfaced. He's like, oh, so that's why no pirate ships have been coming up from Fishman Island in the last few months. He's like, yeah, because there's this guy named Horty down there, and he's a shark, and he's so scary. So I think it was only like a few months before the Straw Hats reunited, that's when Horty started enacting his reign. So even if they get stopped at the front door, Jinbei and Hachan could just boom, and the Straw Hats could just boom, and then they just break through and they enter the actual island the proper way, through the gate. Now, Fishman Island itself, if Horty isn't making a big move yet, this might be a relatively chill arc. This might just be kind of like, let's have fun with the mermaids. Oh, let's meet the prince and everything, because, you know, they're going to want to meet him still. King Neptune and the princes, and they're going to still want to meet Luffy, because Luffy still punched out a celestial dragon. Is like, oh, we just heard the news, and you were at Marineford, and you fought for us alongside Whitebeard. Come to our palace, you know, and so they would still be welcome with open arms. So this might be a relatively quick arc where they just meet up and they have a nice little meal and they learn about the new world and what they're in for, and they get the Nami would still get the new log pose from the Minister of the Left or whatever the hell. They would meet Shirahoshi, Sanji would get a hard on, and then they was like, all right, well, we're good. Later, everybody, and they just sail back to the ocean. Now, if Horty did, let's say Horty did attack, and he's like, oh, the Straw Hats, you know what, this is my time. So, they would go. Now, they might not have such a stockpile of energy steroids at this point, which that might actually even everybody out. okay? Because even when Horty was roided up on those things, Luffy still managed to beat him. It was a little bit more annoying just because they were fighting in the water for a lot of it, and of course Luffy, even doesn't matter how much training Luffy goes through, he's still weak underwater, so that was kind of a handicap. But they mentioned that they stole the Tante de Baco, I forget what it was called, but they steal it from the palace, and Zio uses his chemistry skills to convert them into energy steroids, and then they stockpiled all of those for like the last few years. So they might not have them yet, or if they do, it's a very low number of them. So if the if the new Fishman Pirates attack and Horty attacks, it would be probably a much more difficult fight than what we had, like where Luffy could just take him out no problem, really, where Luffy's just punching Horty through a wall with one attack. But the Straw Hats would still be able to win that. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. Zoro versus Yozu, Frankie versus Icarus Muchi, like they would still be able to win. It would just be maybe a little bit more of a tough fight. But hey, it would probably be evened out because they wouldn't have the steroids. Cool. So Fishman Island probably go off without a hitch. I still think they could handle Fishman Island arc without the time skip. I think that would be fine. So, now we get to the fun part, alright? Sailing up into the new world, alright? And maybe let's just assume maybe there's another guide to help them get to the surface. But then again, Nami's pretty good at this, so they might be able to be okay. Anyway, the whole reason the Straw Hats went to Punk Hazard was because they got that distress signal talking about Kinemon. Like, somebody on Punk Hazard was like, the samurai's taking everybody, everyone dead, get over here, so much blood, it's so cold. Mommy, ponies. So that's what they got the distress signal, like, Luffy's like, let's go there. Sounds like a fun place. But here's the kicker. If this is 2 years before where we're at currently, Kinemon and Kanjuro and Raizo and Momo and everybody, they did not arrive from the past yet. It was actually really convenient that the Straw Hats arrived at Punk Hazard right around the same time they got flung into the future, you know what I mean? So, no Kinemon means there's probably not going to be a distress signal regarding Kinemon from Punk Hazard, which means the Straw Hats have no reason to go there and will probably not even know about its existence. Also, Caesar might have not even set up his lab there yet because the fight between Akainu and Aokiji didn't even happen there yet. By the time the Straw Hats arrive, well, maybe it did, because maybe right after Marineford, Aokiji and Akainu had that brawl, because we don't know exactly when that happened. But if it did happen, it just occurred, and if it didn't, it's still just an empty wasteland. There's no reason for them to go there. So, when they arrive in the New World, they're going to be taking out the freaking New World log post, and they had 3 islands they were going to go to, okay? The first island was Risky Red Island. We know nothing about it, except it's an island that's probably red and has a little bit of risk. And then there's Mysterion Island, which is a mysterious mystery if I ever did mystery. And then the last island was Raijin Island, which was the only island we actually got to see. And Smoker was actually docked there because he was absolutely certain that of all 3 of the islands that you first see upon exiting Fishman Island, Luffy was going to go to Raijin because that's the one that's the most dangerous, because that's the one where the needle is going the most wild at. It's also the island that Arouge first went to when he arrived in the New World. And by the way, we never found out about that. Like, what happened with Arouge? What happened with that creepy old lady that was selling umbrellas? We never found out about what was the deal there. But yeah, if they just pop out of Fishman Island, they're looking at the needle, the Raijin Island needle's going berserk. Luffy's like, let's go there. That's where the party is, Nami. And Nami's like, hard to port. Let's go. So they sail to Raijin Island. I don't know if Smoker would have been there waiting for them. He might have been. Because if the Straw Hats aren't going on hiatus really as much, he might have been preparing for their arrival, who knows. But the Straw Hats would have their first New World adventure on Raijin Island, I guarantee you that. So they would have gotten there, they would have probably figured out, what the hell's going on with this place, this crazy island, you need an umbrella, what's going on here? There might be some enemies on Raijin, no idea who they would have been, maybe a gang, maybe a group of like the Thunder Tribe or something. We are the disciples of Eneru. Oh, that's actually a cool plot device. Anybody that's running a One Piece related tabletop RPG, like a Dungeons and Dragons thing, here's an idea for your campaign, okay? All right, here we go. So you know how Eneru came from the place called Bricka? That was his homeland. We don't know anything about it, really. It was named after an old Viking village, but we don't know anything about it, really. But he came from that land, and then he used his power, the Goro Goro no Mi, to, like, destroy it, and then he went to go to, you know, Upper Yard and whatever. After Eneru was defeated, it was stated that all of his followers, you know, most of them anyway, got banished to the land of drifting clouds. Okay, so that includes, like, Ohm, and I don't think... Did Shura die? I thought Shura was killed by Wiper, but he might have survived. I know Satori was still alive. Geretsu was already... And he got knocked down to the Blue Sea, so he has another side story. But they all got banished, and Yama as well. They all got banished to the land of drifting clouds. Let's say that they somehow managed to escape the land of drifting clouds and they fell to the Blue Sea like Gedatsu did. Because Gedatsu literally fell and just slammed into the ground on the Blue Sea world, and he was fine. He got back up, and he's living a life in the Blue Sea. So let's say the same thing happened with them. They're on the land of drifting clouds, they fall, and they land in the Blue Sea, in the New World, and they decide to go to Raijin Island, because I'm going to assume that Raijin Island is an island that was affected by one of the previous users of the Goro Goro no Mi that was awakened and used his power to permanently alter the weather of the island. So if the followers of, if Eneru's priests land in the New World and they all of a sudden they see an island that's just sparking electricity everywhere, they're probably going to be like, oh, that's the best, if Eneru's down here, that's the best place to find him. So they would go there, and they don't find Eneru, but they find this island, and maybe they're better adapted to it, so they're not that affected by it or whatever, and they create the Disciples of Eneru, and it's like Ohm and Shura and Satori and Yama and a bunch of other, like, really high-ranking members of God's troop, and they just become this gang that, like, rules the island. I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out there, something to work with. But anyway, yeah, they would have arrived there on Raijin Island, and it would have probably been the first time that the Straw Hats had a really tough fight. Like, they got there, and whatever threat awaited them on Raijin, that would be the one where they get really beaten, and it's like, oh, okay, we managed to win, but by a hair's breadth, you know, that kind of thing, right? So, here's the thing, though, afterwards, there's no reason for them to go to Dressrosa, like after Punk Hazard they went to Dressrosa, because Punk Hazard set up this entire arc structure, this saga we're still in right now. Go to Punk Hazard, have the alliance with Law, which, by the way, the alliance with Law would not have happened in this timeline. And then after that, go to Dressrosa to stop Doflamingo. After Dressrosa, go to Zou to try to rendezvous with everybody and find Raizo. After Zou, you know, that's where Sanji meets Beige and gets taken and goes off to, you know, Totland. No reason to go to Totland. No reason to go to Wano after that. So after Raijin Island, that's the first island they arrived in. If they defeated the threat there, they would probably follow a completely different path, because there's different paths along the New World. That's just the one they happen to take with Dressrosa and you know, Totland and everything, but they could have gone on a completely different path at that point. They would have still bumped into the Yonko at some point. And the thing with the Germa would have still occurred. Like, you know, the German probably would have found out about Sanji's existence at some point. They would have still issued the wanted poster, and they might have still tried to find him at some point. Bottom line is, they're probably not going to go to Dressrosa, which is a good thing, because Doflamingo would completely annihilate pre-time skip Luffy. Like, that's not even a... You know what? You know what? I think there's only one proper way for me to show you the fight between... How the fight would go between Dofi and pre-time skip Luffy. Wahahaha! I rule the entire island of Dressrosa with a mighty sock-covered fist, for I am Don Quixote Doflamingo. Watch it right there, Mingo. Ah, Straw Hat Luffy, welcome to my island. I'm gonna kick your ass from here to freaking Fuchsia. Let's do this. Gear second. Are you down yet? I am not. Can I try again? Sure, why not? Gear third! Oh. Oh, okay, well, you know what? Let me go and... Oh, please, please, Mr. Mingo! Oh, God! Oh, God, it hurts so much!
for I am Don Quixote do Flamingo. Whoa-ho-ho-ho-ho.
Yeah, he would have died. Yep, 100%. Anyway, so they wouldn't go there, but even with it, doesn't matter what path they would have taken, they would have eventually ended up in bumping into a Yonko at some point. Whether it had been Kaido, or Blackbeard, or Big Mom, probably not Shanks, because I don't think they're that lucky, you know, because Shanks kind of does his own thing. He doesn't rule over, like, a bunch of countries or whatever, like, that's not Shanks' style. So, more than anything, they would probably I could see them accidentally bumping into Totland, and just be like, oh yeah, this is the country ruled by, Big Mom. Be like, oh, really? Oh, well, we're gonna have an awesome adventure here. They're not there to take back Sanji or anything. They're just there because, oh, well, she's a Yonko, so we have to fight her eventually. You know, so there's two possible ways this can end. Possibility number one, the Straw Hats run across a Yonko territory, they get completely annihilated, and series is over. It's done. And that could totally happen. Pre-time skip, Straw Hats bump into Totland, or they bump into Wano. Probably more likely they would bump into Totland. Katakuri and the commanders, they do something to piss them off. Like, they fight against, like, one of Big Mom's children, and they manage to fight together and defeat them. But then Big Mom gets pissed. Like, if all the Straw Hats were working together, they might have been able to take out a sweet commander like Cracker. Probably, that's even then it's kind of if. But if they did, then the enraged army would show up and just devastate them all, and they would just die. It would be over. Or you could look at it from the other option, kind of the same thing that happened with Kid, where they pick a fight with a Yonko, they get the crap beaten out of them, like Luffy loses a leg or an arm, they get wrecked, and then they manage to escape with their lives, but barely, you know, and then after that, it's like, I should have listened to Rayleigh. Oh, I'm losing an arm, you know, or a leg or whatever. But hey, after this, if it's possible, I mean, not entirely likely, but they might have stumbled upon an island somewhere in the New World that's deserted, and then maybe they could stop and train there, but they wouldn't be training separately, they would be training as a team. You might think that would be better, but not really, because Kuma particularly, you know, he sent each of the Straw Hats to a very specific location that was catered to their training. He sent Zoro, who's a swordsman, to Mihawk's Island. He sent Nami to the Weather Island. He sent Frankie to the Future Island, where Vegapunk was from. Kuma was really smart in where he sent them out. You know? So, as for Brook, I was like, oh, well, you're a skeleton. Let me send you to a really depressing, poverty-stricken island. Maybe you'll figure out something there. Poof. But, yeah, if they just found some random island that was a safe haven, maybe it was an island that was previously protected by Whitebeard or something, and they was like, oh, you were the Straw Hats. You fought with Whitebeard. You're welcome on our island. Something like that. Maybe it's relatively protected, kind of like, you know, Whitebeard's homeland or something. They managed to find that place by absolute luck and happen chance. They could train to get stronger, but they don't have proper teachers, and they don't have a proper teaching environment, so they probably would not get as strong as post-time skip, but they would get strong enough. But yeah, I would probably assume it would be rough, but they would probably end up in the same boat as, like, Kid's in right now. Like, they get strong enough to get by, but then they run across a Yonko, get the crap beaten out of them, probably lose a limb at some point, get a pretty bad scar, and get thrown into a jail cell. I could see that going down with Luffy. Other than that, or they just get completely wiped out. But that's not very exciting now, is it? But it's the thing I think everybody expected when I was making this video. Like, oh, they're just good. What are all the horrible ways they could have gotten taken out? Like, oh, okay, you want me to go through all the horrible ways? All right, well, Luffy probably wouldn't have been able to defeat Caesar. Caesar was an idiot, but he had a Logia, and he can knock people out by removing the oxygen in the air and the environment. There was really no obvious weakness to the gas fruit. Usopp tried lighting him on fire, but that didn't work either because he has a way to prevent that. So unless Luffy somehow managed to figure out a way to take a giant jar that's airtight and seal Caesar in it, probably wouldn't have been able to win. I already went over, you know, Doflamingo. Yeah. Let's see. Luffy fighting against Katakuri. No. just no. So, yeah, he would have gotten probably, you know, covered in mochi and just done. Or even Cracker. Cracker would have probably killed him. You know, it's just that, there you go. So, yeah. Yeah, it would have been pretty bad. So maybe you could comment below on all the different fights that, I mean, it would have been neat to get different varieties of fights. Like, if they managed to make it all the way to Totland, we could have, like, Zoro fighting against Cracker or something. Zoro v. Cracker! Comment that in the comments below, whether it be pre-time skip Zoro versus Cracker or post-time skip Cracker against Zoro. Go ahead. Either way, have fun with it. That's the whole point of these what-if scenarios. Anyway, at the end of the day, I'm glad they had the time skip. I'm glad Luffy was smart enough to take the training from Rayleigh, and they, Straw Hats realized what Kuma really did for them. It was much more of a benefit than a negative there. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time, where we will be discussing the Pika Pika no Mi, the power of light itself!